Well, good morning, everyone. Good evening, depending on your time zone, where you are. Welcome to an interlude with Aham. Happy that everyone is here today, whether here in the room at the Aham Center in North Carolina, at our center in South India, or wherever you are. We're all here together in spirit, in consciousness, where there is no division. And so, as usual, let's begin our time together with some meditation, some guided meditation, where we can all sit in stillness together. Not just physical stillness, but inner stillness. So I invite us to prepare our bodies for meditation, placing it in a comfortable position if you've not already done so. And I also invite you to close your eyes. Sometimes in meditation, the relaxation is so deep that we find ourselves going to sleep. So if you find yourself going into sleep, just simply open your eyes and practice eyes open meditation, whichever feels most comfortable to you. Now let's begin by being aware. Being aware of all that's occurring in our space, in our awareness, both inside and outside. Just simply be aware of what's occurring. Don't judge it. Don't try to do anything about it. Just simply being aware. Just look and see, am I able to just sit in pure awareness, pure stillness and silence? Or is my attention being pulled by thoughts in the mind or experiences occurring in the body or what's occurring around me? Just telling the truth about it. Again, not judging it. A very simple and easy process for bringing attention into the here and now, free of the distraction of thoughts and what's occurring in the body, is by placing your attention on the breath. Just observe your breath. Observe the breathing process. Watch the breath. On the inhale, notice as the breath enters through the nostrils, flows down the windpipe, and empties into the lungs. Filling the lungs with its life-giving energy. And on the exhale, notice as the breath moves out of the lungs, travels back up the windpipe, and exits the body through the nostrils, cleansing and purifying the body. Watch your breath, here and now. By utilizing this simple process of observing and following the flow of the breath, the mind becomes still. Free of its random chatter. And when the mind is still, the peace that is ever present as our true nature is revealed. Now let's move deeper. Let's move prior to breathing, prior to this or that, and actually get in touch with the nature of that one who is observing the breath. By simply asking, who's breathing? Who's aware of the breath? The obvious answer is I am. Now feel I am, meaning put your attention onto the feeling presence I am. Not I am this or I am that, just simply I am. Feeling and relaxing into I am. Feeling I am. Until there is only this presence I am. Not I am this or I am that, just I am. Rest in the peace of your own being. Thinking? Who's thinking? I am. And just simply bring attention back to the feeling presence I am. Your own sense of I am. Let it have you. Let it take you home. Now let's choose to remain here, to remain centered here in our true nature, which is peace, the peace that passeth all understanding, meaning not the peace of the mind. There is no peace when we're caught and stuck in the mind and its thinking. The peace of our true nature, I am. Remaining here forever. And while remaining here forever and now, let's also be here present with eyes open if we choose to, or keep them closed if you like. Good morning again and welcome to Aham. For those of you who are new on the call and first time here in the room, we often greet everyone with namaste. So namaste.
Namaste.
A short definition of namaste would be the divinity in me honors the divinity in you, and if you and I are in that divinity within, in our true self, then there is only one. There is not two. There is not an I and a you. There is only one presence. One presence. Here in our meditation hall at our center here in North Carolina, and in our meditation hall at our center in India. Of course, you see the pictures of three beings. One is over here to my right, our A. Ramana, who is the founder of Aham. And the other is a rendition of course, the Master Teacher Jesus, and also of Bhagavan Sri Ramana Maharshi. What they brought to the world sort of serves as the root, or is the very root of the essence of what Aham shares. I think it can be looked at this way, where, of course, a particular saying that we all may be well aware of is where Jesus said, "But seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all else will be added unto you." Well, how do we do that? How do we seek, or more accurately stated, how do we find the kingdom within? Well, that's where Ramana Maharshi came in. And when he shared with the world the process of, call it the process of meditation, of directly connecting with our true nature, the process is called self-inquiry, which is what we primarily teach or give experiential instruction in here at Aham. At Aham here in North Carolina as well as in India. And we oftentimes during our Sunday morning interludes use the messages, of course, from Ramana Maharshi, as well as some of the messages or from his books, A Ramana, as he shared, but we also honor this being, Jesus. And this morning I thought we'd sort of take a look at a little bit of the teaching of Jesus through the eyes of, or the understanding and revelation of, a gentleman who's actually was a longtime Presbyterian minister called David Robert Ord. He has written a couple of books. One is we used as part of one of our home studies, and it's called Your Forgotten Self. David Robert Ord was, I started to say Unity, but Presbyterian minister, traditional Presbyterian minister for over 20 years. And after he had devoted pretty much a lifetime, his life, to studying the teachings of Jesus, and after some revelation, he pretty much walked away from the traditional Presbyterian church. He still considers himself very much Christian, but he brought a different light, I feel, to Jesus' teachings. Cleared up some misunderstandings maybe. And I think that very much what he shares is very much compatible with what Aham is all about. And so I want to sort of share a bit, some excerpts, and they may be mixed with some of my own words, but I promise you that I am not distorting anything that David Ord is sharing. But it came up as to share this because the particular section that I want to share from in his book called, again, Your Forgotten Self, is called Enjoy Who You Are. Enjoy who you are. And also he speaks of what we share in Aham is be who you are. Or Ramana Maharshi shares, be who you really are. Enjoy, again, who you are. And this particular section deals with, again, about 3 or 4, I guess, concepts that I know I've had in the past and that actually brought up fear for me in relation to spiritual work, in relation to religion, etc. Fear and misunderstanding. And so that's what was coming out. I said, well, maybe, this is something that everybody could benefit from. And I'll begin with sharing right from his book, where it starts off with, Jesus said, "Follow me. Follow me." Now, I don't know about you, but years ago, when I heard those words, that immediately brought up some apprehension to me. Matter of fact, a little bit of fear. And as David Ord says here, at first glance, this hardly sounds like an invitation to be yourself. In fact, for over 2,000 years, millions have harbored the secret fear. Quote, if I follow Jesus, or if I follow Ramana Maharshi, say that, or any of the enlightened ones or enlightened teachings, then I'm not going to get to do what I really want to do. Even worse, if I follow Jesus, life is going to be hard. I won't have much fun because I'll have to give up a lot of things. Anybody ever had those? Well, we've got two here in the room who have had those kinds of feelings to come up. And after all, didn't Jesus say, deny yourself, take up your cross, and follow me? That sounds like a little suffering, doesn't it? And the particular person that David Ord is speaking to here in this dialogue, a lady by the name of Sherry, says, that sounds like suffering, and I'm afraid of suffering. Why can't I just enjoy my life? Why can't I just enjoy my life? And she was basically torn between wanting to be like Jesus, or certainly in my case, not necessarily wanting to be like Jesus, but certainly wanting to live a spiritual life, and also wanting a fulfilling one, an enjoyable one. But being torn with that notion inside that, hey, if I follow what my understanding is of what Jesus is saying, then it ain't going to be good. I'm going to have to give up a lot of things. But here, David Ord says to her, if you really want a fulfilling life, then you need to discover your divine purpose, or really what's so for you, or what's calling you. And the lady says, if you mean I need to discover God's will for me, that frightens me. All of us have heard of God's will, doing God's will. Have you ever had the feeling or notion that, hey, I'm not too sure about that because God's will and my will may be two entirely different things? Okay, and even though I might want to follow God's will, I really don't know what God's will is, or I don't know if I do know what God's will is, then I'm not sure if I'm really up to the task. You know what I mean? And the author, David Ord, says, so yes, you're afraid of what God might ask you to do. Yes, it's bound to be the opposite of what I really want to do. Just be with it, yes, I know. We can all relate. And then what came up for David Ord to share with her is I think God's will is always exactly what we really want to do. And this is what Jesus tried to get people to understand. Now, when he said what we really want to do, he wasn't speaking of what I as an ego want to do. as a selfish one that's only thinking of, quote, me and what's in it for me, but what I, as meaning my true self, wants to do. What's so for me? What's in my heart? And he says this is what Jesus really tried to get people to understand. Jesus wasn't talking about giving up things that you are passionate about. For Jesus, doing the will of God meant being himself in the fullest sense, doing exactly what he wanted to do. What his heart, what his heart is calling for him to do. Have any of us, and I'm sure we have probably, had those notions or feelings to come up that didn't seem to make any sense to the rational mind, but it felt like this is really what's so for me? This is really what's pulling me right now. And it doesn't mean necessarily that we have to give up what we're doing. See, because I know that notion can come up too, that I got to stop what I'm doing. I've spent years perfecting my profession or my ability to practice whatever my profession is or do the work that I'm involved in. Does that mean I'm going to have to give all that up? No, not at all. See, this is one thing that was happening with me for some time. It was the uncertainty of, am I really doing God's will? Am I doing what I'm supposed to be doing? Or what I'm doing right now, it can't be God's will. And that's where I found that the key to getting free of all of that is meditation. Meditation. See, it was actually oftentimes what we're involved in, whatever we're really enjoying, it feels fulfilling to us. But that conflict gets in there sometime. Well, I still don't know if it's God's will. What's happening, I found, is that it was just those thoughts. The mind getting in there, the ego getting in there. And with meditation, all of that gets cleared out. And a lot of my anxiety in the past has come from not being or not feeling or wondering if I'm being true to myself. It's not that I actually needed to change anything or that we necessarily need to change anything that we're doing, but it's the very anxiety of wondering, am I being true to myself? Am I honoring God's will? Anybody know what I mean? And that is really what I find is the true value of meditation. We'll call it self-inquiry, or what we're really all about here. Let me go on in sharing from your forgotten self. To follow Jesus isn't an invitation to copy the life of a Jewish carpenter and teacher in ancient Palestine and trying to play the role that he played. It's not about trying to follow Ramana Maharshi, to be that in terms of how he expressed, in India wearing a loincloth and all. It's not about that. Not about that at all. Rather, it is to become the kind of person he was, or being, a person guided by the presence of God within. So then the question comes up, well, how do I know that presence? How do I tap into that presence? How can I be sure that I am connected to that presence? Again, that's where meditation is the key. And we'll know when we know. You know. We know when we're feeling completely and totally at peace, don't we? We don't need anybody to tell us, do we? Aren't there some things that come into your awareness, our awareness, that we're absolutely certain of? We don't need any kind of validation from anyone or anything outside ourselves. It feels right. It feels to be what's so. It's a feeling of, I am fully and absolutely comfortable with who I am, as I am, right now, not in the future. Because the only time that I can be, or we can be fully and totally comfortable with who we are is when? When? Right now. Right now. And I feel that that's actually, too, what Jesus meant by when he said, what? The kingdom of God is when? Now. It's at hand, isn't it? It's right now. So right now, let's allow ourselves right now to feel totally comfortable, totally okay, totally fulfilled with who and what we are right now. And that is I am. Not I am this, not even I am fulfilled. Just pure I am. It is recorded that Ramana Maharshi's favorite subject when he was in school was the study of the Bible. And he has often said and stated in some of his books that the sum, there's a statement in the Bible that sums up all the scriptures in Hindu, Muslim, Christianity, all religions. It sums up the essence of all religions. And that statement is, I am that I am. And I get that what is meant by that all teachings are directing us to the realization that this one statement represents. I am that I am. Now, our A. Ramana would probably say, why not cut out all of the other stuff and just go straight directly to I am that I am? Well, in a way, that's what Aham is about too, in that it's known that self-inquiry is a most direct way for realizing that. See, it's not just, we all know that it's not just about knowing intellectually I am that I am. What good is that? It's about experientially getting that, isn't it? Living as that. Right here, right now. And one doesn't have to change anything. in order for that to occur. We're all feeling it right now, aren't we? Just tune in. Just pure I am. Not I am this or I am that. Just I am. Doesn't it feel complete? And anything need to be added? As a matter of fact, to add anything to it sort of takes away from it. To say I am this or I am that. A little bit more from David Ord. The lady in this particular section of the book, the lady who he's speaking to says, but aren't we supposed to sacrifice? What about Jesus's command to take up our cross daily? Robert Ord says, there may be plenty of sacrificing once you discover what your life's mission is, but this kind of sacrifice doesn't deprive you of what you want out of life. On the contrary, it enables you to achieve it. You will willingly spend yourself for what you're meant to do. The more you give yourself to something you truly love, the greater your fulfillment. The sacrifice is simply sacrificing that which is not supporting my highest good. But you see, if the mind has gotten used to something, anybody ever knows the mind can get used to something, keep doing it over and over again, and it can seem really enjoyable, but it's not necessarily to our benefit. Anybody ever had a habit that we know, hey, I really know that this is not good for me, but I just can't stop doing it? Anybody ever had one of them? Maybe at least, well, I've had one, so no. But does the mind like it when you say, okay, I'm going to stop doing this? Does the mind go, oh, goody, goody, I'm glad he finally got it?
Hardly.
Or does it resist? It resists, doesn't it? It resists. So we can't rely on the mind. We're not talking about that. We're not relying on the mind to say, okay, this is good for you and this is not good for you. We automatically begin to know. So that's the sacrifice. We sacrifice that which is not supporting our highest good. I've certainly found that to be the case in being involved in this work for a number of years. God invites you to be yourself. See, Jesus presents us with a paradox. This is a good one, I think. On one hand, the gospel writers reveal a man who was fully himself. On the other hand, they make it clear that Jesus was obedient to God in every aspect of his life. Obedient. Let's take a look at that. Just Jesus' understanding of the will of the Father is different from how many think of God's will, which is generally understood as contrary to what we really want or our desires. To many, to obey God's will seems to be a chore that requires giving up what we really want to do. We have trouble with the word, quote, obey today. Anybody here really like that word? Is that a good word, obey? Oh, it's good when we're talking to somebody else, but I'm talking about when we're looking at it for ourselves. Obedience is a concept that comes from an era that was more authoritarian than our democratic way of life or era. Even, quote, the will of God sounds like an imposition rather than an invitation. But you see, in the New Testament, authors spoke of the will of God, so we can have an understanding. This really cleared up something for me in relation to the Bible. The New Testament authors spoke of God as a king and a lord, not because God is a king or a lord, but because they were restricted to the language of their day and bound by the images of their world. Theirs was an era of kings and lords, so it was these images they borrowed to speak of what was most essential in their lives. To understand the, quote, will of God and what it means is to be obedient to God is necessary. To really understand the will of God is necessary to shed the authoritarian overtones of the language. The good news proclaimed by Jesus is characterized by invitation. Invitation. So it's helpful to switch the language, so to speak, because Jesus began to introduce this new language just before his death, as he spoke to his followers as friends, not as servants. He stressed that love, a passion for life and for people, not just obediently towing the line, that is the mark of doing the will of God. What are you passionate about? Not in our heads, not in our thoughts. That's not what he's saying. But in your heart and spirit. This is where God's will is found. What is speaking to us? And again, I feel that in most cases, in many cases, what we're already doing is what's so, is what's God's will, is what we're getting enjoyment or feeling that we're serving our purpose. But it's these questions that can come up in our heads. The mind can throw up these questions, the ego can throw up these questions and not allow us to really see for ourselves that what I want is right here, right now, right in front of me. Anybody ever been in a situation, or it could be work, or a relationship, friendship, whatever, and while involved in it, couldn't really be present and fully experience it, get the full benefit out of it, because my thoughts were of being somewhere else. I wish I was doing something else. Or maybe I should be doing something else. Am I really doing what I should be doing? But then later on, when you find yourself out of that situation and in another situation, start looking back and say, well, you know what? I think I had it pretty damn good right where I was. Anybody know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
So again, it's about getting in touch with our true self, which is not something outside ourself. It's about getting in touch with who we are right now and following our heart's nudgings. Our heart's nudging is God's nudging. All the true scriptures say what? God lives where? Within. Be still and know that I am is the source, is God. How do we be still? See, that brings up another thing. Even sometimes in meditation, in true meditation, which is abiding in stillness, we can go into meditations. I'm going into meditation so I can know something. But we never get still. We want to know before we get still. But the rule is, or the guide is, the instruction is to what? Be still what? First. Be still first. And then the knowing happens. I know certainly in the past, after I got what Aham shares, and really how to be still, I'd be in meditation, and then after about a minute or so, I'd pop up with, see, I'm still not knowing something. I'm still not knowing. I'm still not knowing. I still don't have it. Forgetting that the emphasis is on being what? Still. Being still. Be still. Ramana Maharshi is often quoted in his books as saying, as given the instruction of how does awakening, enlightenment occur or happen? He says, be still. Be still. That is the true purpose of spiritual practice. It's not to create who I really am or who we really are. It is to be still. And then who I really am is expressed as stillness, inner stillness, while even being involved in whatever one is involved in. I know with Ramana, our Ramana, when he was alive, there was a time, particularly in Greensboro and down when we moved here to the Aham Center in Asheboro, where you'd see him, he'd be moving his body. He'd be involved in all sorts of things. All those of us who know him or knew him back then knew. It would look like he was just a ball of energy. All over the place it looked like. And yet, there was stillness. He was coming from stillness. Because what? He knew who he really was or is. And also with that knew that he was not the body, not the mind. Because he used to repeat all the time, get it, we have a body, we have a mind, but we're not the body, we're not the mind. So even the movements of the body, when all over the place, that can still be occurring, but there is absolute stillness. It's like a spinning wheel. Anybody ever seen a spinning top? Or the hurricane. There's a lot going on the circumference of a hurricane, isn't it? But where is the power?
The center.
The center. And what's going on in the center or the eye of the hurricane?
Nothing.
Nothing. Nothing. We are the center. I am. Not I am this or I am that. Just I am. Feel that right now. People don't come to Aham to really learn how to do anything, how to do this, do more of this, do more of that. We are already doing enough. We come to Aham to get how to just be. And from there, from here, in just being than what is to naturally be expressed through us, from us, naturally happens. And to alleviate any fears, I think the Zen came up with the best saying on that. Before enlightenment, you chop wood and carry water. After enlightenment, what do?
Chop wood.
You chop wood and you still carry water. Same thing if you're choosing to do the same thing, but it's where you're coming from. It's where one is coming from then, which is a whole different place. It's no longer I'm chopping wood and carrying water in order to get something in the future. I'm chopping wood and carrying water because, hey, I just like chopping wood and carrying water. So, I've used up most of the time. Please forgive me. I would like to share just a couple of more things that I think will be beneficial. Well, one more, where he says that God's commands are internal. Now, this is really the value of meditation, of a true spiritual practice, a transformational practice. God's commands are internal. God's will is an impulse, an internal impulse, not an external demand. That's pretty significant. It's your deep longing, perhaps suppressed for years, that wants to be expressed. It's your deep longing, perhaps suppressed for years. Your deep longing to be and express as the unique being that you truly are or can be. God's commandments are your heart's intuition. I know about the anxiety over questioning. Am I really being true to myself? The anxiety of holding back. That's where I found, I know in my life, when I look back over it, that's where actually most of my stress has come from. It's not in what I was doing. It's the anxiety of not being true to myself. You know what I mean? And that doesn't have to be. You're smart. You're here. I had to do a whole lot of suffering before I got here. So let's just take what has come up and just take it into the silence for a moment before we end the call. Whatever is being experienced right now in this moment, be with it. No matter what it is, let it be okay, whatever your experience is. Just let it be there. Whatever your experience is, whatever we're experiencing, it's an experience, it's not who we are. An experience is just simply an experience. but we put our attention, we give priority attention not to the experience. We acknowledge the experience, but not give priority attention to it. We put our priority attention on the experiencer. Who's experiencing? I am. Feeling I am, and only I am. This is our true self. What we do is an expression of our true self. It's not who we are. Be here in peace, stillness, I amness, and be free. Freedom now. Happiness now. Thank you, and namaste.
Namaste.